Some cases can take at least 1 to 2 years, but every so often we get a case that takes a couple of months. So it really depends on the very specific facts. Recently, we had a case that was able to take us 2 months beginning to end, as opposed to 2.5 years beginning to end. That's only because
With the new administration, the focus on immigration has, up until recently, been on people who have overstayed in the U.S. or people who are there illegally or undocumented, and then the deportations that have been happening.
Hi, I'm Ryan Barshop. I'm one of the American immigration attorneys with Enterline Partners, and I'm based in Manila, Philippines, and Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam.
Hi, I'm David Enterline. I'm a partner with Enterline Partners Consulting, and I've lived and worked in Asia for over 30 years, and we have offices in Manila, Philippines, and Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam.
As immigration attorneys, how do you measure success for clients once the case is completed?
The way you measure success is how did they get there, but what did we do to get them there? For example, did we communicate with them effectively? Yes. Were we there for them to answer all their questions? Yes. Did we proactive on their case? Yes. Did we provide them with periodic updates, maybe every 3 to 6 months? Yes. Did they seem happy with us? Yes. So it's not just the finished product; it's beginning to end of how they reach the finish line.
How about time frame? What's the, I guess, typical time frame where you could say, yeah, that went well?
That depends on the case. Some cases can take at least 1 to 2 years, but every so often we get a case that takes a couple of months. So it really depends on the very specific facts. Recently, we had a case that was able to take us 2 months beginning to end, as opposed to 2.5 years beginning to end. That's only because this client qualified for a certain benefit. But in the beginning, we're going to make it very clear to them the time frame, what they expect. One thing we tell them in the very beginning, before we even begin our engagement agreement, before we sign it, and certainly before we take any money, is we manage expectations of how long this process will take. We also are very direct with them to say, look, this process can go as fast as you work with us. So if you're delayed on giving us the documentation, this will delay your case. If you're delayed in responding to us, this will delay your case. So the quicker you give us your documents, the quicker we get started, the more you communicate with us on missing information, the faster your case will get done.
What are the documents that clients need to have ready in order to make sure there are no delays?
There's a wide list of documentation that we provide them in. Whenever we begin a case, we always provide our clients with two main sources of documents: detailed questionnaires and initial documentation list. Now, more documents may be needed as the case progresses, even before filing, but this is your basic of what we need, and this is based on U.S. government requirements as well as work experience that we know what's needed for a case to help to avoid a delay. So basic things like proof of citizenship, like a passport or birth certificate. If there's a relationship based on marriage, we need the marriage certificate. If there's any divorces or deaths or annulment, we'll need those decrees as well. If there's children involved, we'll need their passports or we'll need their birth certificates. We may require relationship photos. We may require statements executed under penalty of perjury. We may require documents from third parties. It really depends on the circumstances, but the initial list is what we give them. And then depending on what we review, more may be requested. And we tell them very upfront with them that this is initial and more might be requested.
What are some of the trickier documents to get? Because it sounds pretty basic so far, but are there certain curveballs that come where they're like, oh, I don't know where that thing is?
Sure. If, let's say, you have a U.S. citizen petitioner that's been married multiple times over the course of many, many years, they don't know where, maybe they don't know where the divorce was registered or where it was decided. If that's the case, we're going to have them think about where that was. Um, we'll need them to contact the county courts of where that happened. If there was a criminal history, we're going to need them to provide us maybe an FBI background check, and then we'll need them to go into their county criminal courts for the actual criminal records as well. So it really depends on the circumstances.
Outside of preparing documentation, what are some things clients can do to ensure that their case is successful and outside of telling the truth early on in the consultation?
If the client is missing information, the client needs to provide the lawyer the information as quickly as possible so the case can be pushed through. as quickly as possible. If the client delays documentation, providing with the lawyer with missing information, the case gets delayed. Lawyers can only work with what they have. The lawyer cannot create documentation that doesn't exist.
I imagine there's logistical things, for example, in the Philippines compared to the US. And even the US is not that great on helping out people with, reprinting documents, mailing documents. But are there challenges to collecting all these documents, especially if things are lost? And do you guys help out with that, or is that just like you're on your own?
We absolutely help out. We can provide recommendations. The good news is for the Philippines and in Vietnam, many of the documentation is centralized.
Okay.
So, for example, police clearances are all through one central agency. For the Philippines, documentation is through something called the PSA or the Philippine Statistics Authority. So that covers birth certificates, death certificates, marriage certificates. So that is easily accessible. Takes a couple of days. You can apply for it online. 2 or 3 days later, you have a courier drop it off at your house personally. It's very easy to get. There's no delays.
Yeah, because I would be under the impression, oh, I've lost that stuff. I lost my chance of immigrating to the US. But um, I think, yeah, governments are getting better at organizing this documents.
Governments are getting much better across the board. I mean, if it's there, it exists. Police clearances can be issued within a couple of days. Major civil documents can be issued very quickly. So it's not like it takes months or years to get a document. If it's there, and you'll be able to get it very quickly.
So, David, can you pull the curtain back? And once you've got all these documents and everything is sorted, what are the challenges ahead on your side where you could either push this through real smoothly, or you could encounter pitfalls? Maybe just share how that process works behind the scenes.
During the process of collecting documents and information, we're usually completing forms that need to be reviewed, and then signed and dated by the client and sent back to us. And then when we receive all the forms that are signed, we would review them and countersign them as the attorney, and then gather all the documentation that's required to file with the form, and then review it to make sure it's all correct, and then we would file it with U.S. Immigration Service.
And have you found any particularly tricky parts to this, especially with laws changing? Maybe we can even get into like the Trump administration part two.
Well, it is important to make sure that you are using the most up-to-date form. Forms do change over time. Recently, many of the U.S. Immigration Service petitions were updated because they changed on the petition form. It said sex before, male, female. Now that was changed to say gender. So we can't use a form that's now out of date.
Oh, wow.
Oftentimes, unfortunately, U.S. Immigration Services will update a form without any prior notice, and it's effective immediately. So this requires us to be on top of our game. As members of the American Immigration Law Association, we get daily updates from U.S. Immigration Services, whether it's from Department of Homeland Security or the State Department or Customs and Border Protection. So what we do is, let's say, for example, a case is about to be filed, but we just received an update that the form is now officially outdated and there's no grace period. We quickly and proactively have to reach the client and said, this was just announced, your case has not been filed yet. So we need to complete a new form, send it back to you, please sign it, and we have to replace this new form with the now outdated form. But every so often there is a grace period. But for those that are not a grace period, it's really important that we're proactive, because if we send it out once it was announced, then the case could be rejected depending on the circumstances and sent back to us.
What's changed with the Trump administration coming back into power? Has that affected your practice?
I think with the new administration, the focus on immigration has, up until recently, been on people who have overstayed in the U.S. or people who are there illegally or undocumented, and then the deportations that have been happening. As far as the rest of the U.S. immigration and visa processing, there hasn't been a lot of obvious change. We have started to see kind of a trickle down through the agencies of things becoming more difficult or maybe taking longer. Some policy changes that might have be taking place that are not announced, but we're starting to see the effect of that. And so one of the challenges is that we may not know that there's been a change until one of our cases may be impacted by that change. And we're going to start seeing more and more of that.
Is it getting harder to immigrate to the US?
It's becoming a little bit more difficult to immigrate. Now, the laws have not necessarily changed for 90% of the people that are wanting to go to the US, but the policies are starting to change, which can make it more difficult.
If I may add a personal story into that situation, a couple of years ago, we had a client. There was a client situation at the time their child was born. The parents were married, but they met when the wife was pregnant. And as a result, at the time we spoke with them. Their child that was born during the marriage, but the American citizen was not the father. The child was not eligible for what we call a consular report of birth abroad, which is U.S. citizenship born abroad. So as a result, we filed immigrant petition for that child. After we filed the immigrant petition, there was a change in the policy that went unannounced. And apparently what happened was, I think that was happened, there was a change that was stuffed into some of the appropriations bill. And then later on, we find out when the family was going for a citizenship interview for their biological child, they were told there was a change in the law, and now even though that child was not biologically the child of the U.S. citizen, the child still was eligible for citizenship. And I was left scratching my head. I'm saying, what's going on here? This makes no sense. So the first thing I did was reach out to our listserv, which is a network of immigration lawyers. I said, "Anybody know about this?" And everybody's like, "No, this is insane. Why did they make that call? You should challenge this."
So the child was not,
The child was not biologically the child because the previous rule required 3 steps. Especially, you had to be a US the parent had to be a US citizen by birth, either the husband or the man or the woman. 2, the parent who was transmitting citizenship had to have what we call physical presence, meaning enough time living in the US. And 3, there had to be a biological link between the US citizen parent and the child. But in this situation, after we filed the petition, there was a change in policy that states you don't need the biological link. And I'm thinking, I'm scratching my head. What is happening here? I sent out the listserv, and everybody said, this is wrong. This is crazy. But there were at least 1 or 2 members in the listserv said, no, there was an updated policy. It was just hidden. No one knew about this. And we found out after the petition was already filed, that the child now qualifies for citizenship, and this was unknown to us. So sometimes the new law hits us nowhere, and we find out through other means. But as a result of knowing that, now we can identify clients in a similar situation. Okay, there's a change in the policy. You don't need to petition them. They now qualify for citizenship by being considered born abroad. So you don't need to go through the whole immigration process for them. They're already qualified for U.S. citizenship.
yeah, that's good news for the client. So the child doesn't need to have a biological US citizen parent.
As long as the parents were married at the time the child was born. So let's say that's not the biological, let's say it's a U.S. citizen parent and a foreign national mother. But the mother was pregnant before they met. So mathematically, the father couldn't be the parent.
Right.
But because they were married, at the time the child was born, you don't need the biological link. So the biological link between the parents, the U.S. citizen parent, no longer applies. And this was a policy done mainly because of assisted reproductive technology.
Hmm.
Previously, you needed a link. There needed the biological link between the parent transmitting citizenship. But then sorry, let me back up for a minute. Previously, for assisted reproductive technology, you still needed the biological link. So let's say the mother was implanted with the sperm and the embryos, but there wasn't a biological link between the mother, the U.S. citizen mother, or the U.S. citizen father, even though the mother gave birth to the child. The policy now is provided the mother gave birth to that child, even if there's no biological link, the child could still be a U.S. citizen parent if one of the parents, if they're married, and one of the parents is a U.S. citizen
Hmm.
at the time of birth.
And how new is that law?
Well, this new law came out 2 years ago.
Okay, so yeah, this is Biden, not Trump.
It was a Biden.
Yeah.
Yes, it was a Biden
It
era.
doesn't sound like Trump.
It was a Biden era, and it was one of those new laws that was made, but that was just like stuffed into some appropriations bill.
Mm.
If you're interested in acquiring a U.S. visa, or if you have any questions about the immigration process, or you'd like to speak to an immigration attorney that's based in Southeast Asia, you can contact us directly at info@enterlinepartners.com.
We can help you no matter where you are around the world. We operate fully 100% through modern technology, so you don't have to meet us personally. We're happy to get on a call with you, do a Zoom.
And lastly, but not importantly, don't forget to hit the subscribe button on YouTube.